Stay still. The words left Elowen's cracked lips before she could stop them, her trembling hand shooting out to grip the Alpha King's powerful forearm. His muscles tensed beneath her fingers, solid as carved stone, and the entire throne room fell into a silence so complete she could hear her own racing heartbeat. King Kirin Ashwood turned his golden eyes toward her, those devastating amber depths that had conquered nations and brought lesser wolves to their knees. And for a moment, Elowen forgot how to breathe. His face was a masterpiece of masculine perfection, all sharp angles and defined edges, framed by dark hair that fell across his forehead in tousled waves. His jaw could have been chiseled from granite, and when his lips parted to speak, she caught the glint of sharp canines. "You dare touch me?" His voice was a low rumble that vibrated through her entire body. Around them, the gathered nobility gasped. Elowen heard the distinctive sound of swords being drawn from scabbards by the king's guards. Her knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself to maintain her grip on his arm, even as her damaged wolf whimpered in terror deep inside her broken soul. "The wine," she whispered, her voice hoarse from years of disuse. "Please, your majesty, don't drink the wine." The silver chalice hovered inches from his perfectly sculpted lips. Steam rose from the dark liquid within, curling in delicate tendrils that caught the light from the massive chandeliers overhead. Elowen could smell it, that subtle, acrid undertone that didn't belong. Her wolf, fractured and weak as it was, had caught the scent the moment the servant had placed the cup on the table. "Explain yourself." King Kirin didn't lower the chalice, but he didn't raise it further either. His broad shoulders blocked out the light behind him, casting Elowen in shadow. Even seated on his throne, he was enormous, easily 6.5 feet of pure, primal power, contained in a devastatingly handsome frame. The formal coat he wore did nothing to hide the massive muscles beneath, his chest straining against the fabric with each breath. Elowen's courage faltered. She was nothing, less than nothing, a broken Omega whose wolf had been shattered in a rogue attack 5 years ago, leaving her unable to shift, unable to heal, unable to contribute anything of value to a pack. The Ashwood servants had taken her in out of pity, giving her the lowest position in the kitchens where she scrubbed floors and emptied chamber pots. No one looked at her. No one spoke to her unless it was to bark an order. And yet, here she stood, touching the most powerful alpha in the Western Territories, interrupting his coronation feast. Her voice cracked. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could sense the barely contained fury of Lord Casimir Thorne standing 20 feet away, his silver eyes glittering with malice. He was the one. She knew it with absolute certainty, though she couldn't explain how. "I smelled something. In the wine. Something wrong. This pathetic creature is delusional, Your Majesty." Lord Casimir's smooth voice cut through the air like poisoned honey. He was handsome in a cold, refined way, with platinum hair and aristocratic features that belonged in a marble sculpture. But there was something rotten beneath that beautiful exterior. "She's a broken Omega from the kitchens. Mad, most likely. I've heard she speaks to herself and sees things that aren't there." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled nobles. Elowen felt shame burn through her chest, hot and suffocating. They were right. She was broken. Everyone knew it. Why would anyone believe her? She started to pull her hand away, but King Kirin's other hand, massive, with long fingers and a dusting of dark hair across the knuckles, covered hers, holding it in place against his forearm. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elowen, Your Majesty. Elowen Thrace." "And what did you smell, Elowen Thrace?" His voice had gentled, just a fraction, but enough that she dared to meet his eyes again. What she saw there stole her breath. Intelligence, curiosity, and something else. Something that made her damaged wolf stir for the first time in years, trying to claw its way toward the surface despite being unable to emerge. "Nightshade," she whispered. "And something else. Silver dust, I think. Mixed together." She swallowed hard, aware that every word could be her last. My mother was a healer. Before the attack, she taught me the sense of every poison, every harmful herb. That wine smells like death, Your Majesty. King Kieran's jaw tightened, the muscle there flexing in a way that drew attention to the devastating line of his profile. His wolf ears, dark and pointed, flickered atop his head, visible in his semi-shifted state that he maintained during formal occasions as a display of dominance. They swiveled toward her, then toward the chalice, as if he too were now analyzing the scent. Preposterous! Lord Casimir stepped forward, his hand pressed to his chest in a gesture of wounded dignity. Your Majesty, I personally selected that wine from your father's private collection. It's a vintage from the year of your birth, meant to honor your ascension to the throne. This addled Omega insults not only me, but the memory of your late father by suggesting, Gareth. The king's voice cracked like a whip. Test it. A massive wolf, the king's beta, materialized from the shadows near the throne. Gareth Ironwood was nearly as large as his king, with a scarred face and silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe knot. Without hesitation, he took the chalice from Kieran's hand and carried it to a nearby table where a cage of white doves sat as decorations. The room held its collective breath. Gareth poured a small amount of the wine into a dish and slid it into the cage. The doves, drawn by curiosity, approached the liquid. One dipped its beak to drink. Alawan counted 5 seconds before the bird began to convulse. 10 seconds before it collapsed. 15 seconds before it lay completely still. Small chest no longer rising and falling. No. Lord Casimir's face had gone pale beneath his aristocratic tan. That's impossible. I don't understand. The wine was perfectly fine when I... Seize him! King Kieran rose from his throne, and the movement was like watching a mountain stand up. His full height was staggering, his shoulders impossibly broad, his chest a wall of solid muscle barely contained by his formal attire. His eyes had begun to glow, that brilliant amber shifting to something more primal, more wolf. When he bared his teeth, the sharp canines were unmistakable. Guards descended on Lord Casimir like a pack on wounded prey. The nobleman sputtered protests, his carefully maintained composure crumbling as they dragged him away from the feast tables. Your Majesty, please. I am a loyal subject. I would never. This is a mistake. Someone must have tampered with the wine after I selected it. Your Majesty. His cries faded as he was hauled from the throne room. The nobility erupted into frantic whispers, their voices rising and falling like waves against a shore. Ilawan stood frozen, still beside the throne, her hand now empty where it had gripped the king's arm. She felt untethered, adrift, her body beginning to shake with the aftershocks of adrenaline and terror. She had just accused a high lord of attempted assassination. Even if she'd been right, she'd overstepped every boundary that existed for someone of her position. She should leave, disappear back into the kitchens before anyone remembered she existed. Elowen turned to flee, but that massive hand, the king's hand, wrapped around her wrist with surprising gentleness. Wait. It wasn't a command, though his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. It was something softer, something that made her fractured wolf keen with an emotion she didn't recognize. King Kieran looked down at her, and Elowen realized for the first time that she barely reached the middle of his chest. He was enormous, powerfully built in a way that should have terrified her. Yet the way he held her wrist, firm but careful, as if she were made of spun glass, sent warmth flooding through her veins instead of fear. You saved my life, he said. I only did what anyone would have. No. His thumb brushed across the inside of her wrist, and Elowen's breath hitched. Could he feel her pulse? Could he sense the way her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest? Most would have looked away. Most would have assumed they were wrong, that their broken wolf had led them astray. Most would have chosen their own safety over mine. Broken wolf. The words stung even from his lips, even though they carried no cruelty. Why didn't you? He asked. Elowen didn't have an answer, or rather, she had one, but it made no sense. From the moment King Kieran Ashwood had entered the throne room for his coronation feast, something inside her had shifted. Her wolf, dormant and shattered for 5 years, had stirred. And when she'd smelled the poison in his wine, when she'd seen him raise that chalice to his beautiful mouth, every instinct she possessed had screamed at her to stop him. She couldn't tell him that. She couldn't tell him that, despite being broken, despite having no wolf to speak of, she'd felt an inexplicable pull toward him the moment their eyes had met across the crowded room. "I don't know, Your Majesty," she whispered. His eyes searched hers, those devastating amber depths seeming to see straight through to her soul. His wolf ears flickered, focusing on her completely, and she realized that in this moment, in this impossible, surreal moment, she had the complete attention of the most powerful alpha in the territories. "Elowen Thrace," he said, and the way he spoke her name made it sound like something precious, rather than the worthless title it had become. "I owe you a debt." "No, Your Majesty, please. I always pay my debts." He released her wrist, but only to extend his hand, palm up, in a gesture of offering. "Dance with me." The throne room went silent again. Elowen stared at his hand. Large, powerful, with those slightly elongated fingers that hinted at claws beneath the surface, and felt the world tilt on its axis. I can't," she managed. I don't belong. Tonight, you belong exactly where I say you belong." King Kieran's voice dropped lower, into that register that vibrated through her bones. "And I say you belong at my side." She heard gasps from the nobility, heard feminine voices raised in protest, the high-born daughters who'd been preening all evening, hoping to catch the new king's eye. Elowen was acutely aware of her appearance. The rough servant's dress, the burn scars on her forearms from kitchen accidents, the way her dark hair hung limp and unstyled around her thin face. She was nothing like the beautiful, polished women who graced these halls. But the king was still holding out his hand, still waiting, and something deep in Elowen's chest. Something that felt almost like her broken wolf, but stronger, more insistent, demanded that she take it. Her fingers trembled as she placed her hand in his. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm. King Kieran's fingers closed around hers, completely engulfing her small hand, and he drew her toward the center of the throne room with a gentle but inexorable pull. The crowd parted before them like water before the prow of a ship. The musicians, frozen in shock until now, hastily struck up a waltz. Elowen had never danced in her life. Her family had been common wolves, her mother a healer, and her father a carpenter. There'd been no elegant balls, no formal instruction. Panic seized her throat. "I don't know how," she whispered urgently as King Kieran turned to face her. "Then trust me." His right hand settled on her waist, large enough to span nearly the entire width of her torso, and he drew her close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his massive frame, could smell the scent of him. Pine and smoke and something wild and untamed that made her wolf whimper with longing. "I won't let you fall." He began to move, and Elowen had no choice but to follow. His hand on her waist guided her, his strength compensating for every misstep she made. She felt clumsy and graceless, but King Kieran moved with a fluid power that made the dance seem effortless. His eyes never left hers. "You're shaking," he observed. "I'm terrified, Your Majesty." "Of me?" She should say yes. It would be easier, safer. But something about the way he looked at her, with genuine curiosity rather than the disgust or pity she'd grown accustomed to, made her want to be honest. "Of this," she admitted. "Of everyone watching. Of what comes after, when you remember that I'm just a broken omega from the kitchens, and this is all a beautiful dream I'm going to wake from." His hand tightened fractionally on her waist. The music swelled around them, violins singing a melody that seemed to match the frantic rhythm of her heart. "I've known many wolves who could shift perfectly, who had powerful wolves and impressive bloodlines," King Kieran said quietly, his voice meant only for her. "Most of them would have let me drink that wine, either because they were too afraid to speak up, or because they simply didn't care enough to look. But I'm You're brave. He spun her, and she gasped, clutching at his shoulders for balance. The muscles there were like iron beneath her palms, his entire body a testament to raw, primal strength. You're observant. You saw what others missed, and when it mattered, you risked everything to save someone you didn't even know. I know you, Elowen said before she could stop herself. The words came from that deep place inside her, from the part that had recognized him the moment he'd entered the room. I mean, everyone knows you, Your Majesty. You're the king. The corner of his mouth quirked up in something that might have been a smile, and the expression transformed his already devastating features into something that made Elowen's knees weak. Call me Kieran, he said. When we're like this, call me Kieran. I couldn't possibly... You just saved my life. You can call me by my name. The song was ending. Elowen could feel the final notes approaching, could sense their time together running out like sand through an hourglass. When the music stopped, reality would crash back in. He would remember his position, and she would remember hers, and this impossible moment would end. But then Kieran leaned down, bringing his lips close to her ear. His breath was warm against her skin, sending shivers cascading down her spine. Do you feel it? He whispered. This pull between us? Elowen's breath caught. She did feel it. She'd been trying not to acknowledge it, trying to convince herself it was just the adrenaline or the shock or her broken mind playing tricks on her. But it was undeniable. This magnetic force that seemed to draw her toward him, that made her want to press closer, to bury her face against his broad chest and breathe in his scent until it saturated her soul. Yes, she whispered back. The music ended. Kieran straightened, but he didn't release her. His golden eyes had begun to glow again, that primal amber light that spoke of his wolf rising to the surface. His grip on her waist tightened, possessive and protective all at once. Your Majesty. A sharp, feminine voice cut through the moment like a blade. Lady Vivian Blackthorn, one of the most beautiful she-wolves in the territory, with flowing golden hair and a figure that made men forget their own names, stepped forward from the crowd. Her smile was cold and calculating. Surely you've indulged this creature long enough. There are important matters to discuss, alliances to be forged. Your coronation feast shouldn't be derailed by a servant's wild accusations and delusions of grandeur. Several nobles murmured agreement. Elowen felt the familiar shame burning through her again, the weight of her inadequacy pressing down on her shoulders. Lady Vivian was right. She was nobody. She should disappear back into the kitchens where she belonged. She tried to pull away, but Kieran's hand on her waist held her in place. Lady Vivian! His voice had gone cold, all traces of warmth vanishing. This woman, Elowen Thrace, saved my life tonight. She saw a threat that everyone else in this room either missed or chose to ignore. She risked her own safety to protect her king, despite having no obligation to do so, and every reason to remain silent. He turned his glowing amber gaze on the assembled nobility, and Elowen felt the power radiating from him in waves. This was the Alpha King who had won 3 wars before the age of 28, who could command armies with a single word, who made strong wolves drop to their knees with nothing more than a look. If anyone in this room believes that makes her lesser, that makes her unworthy of my attention, they can challenge me directly. His lips pulled back to reveal those sharp canines fully. Please, I welcome it. Silence. Not a single person moved. Not even Lady Vivian dared to speak. Kieran's expression softened as he looked back down at Elowen, and the transformation was startling. The brutal Alpha King became something gentler, something almost tender. Come, he said, offering his arm. I think we've both had enough of this feast. Elowen stared at his arm, massive, muscular, the sleeve of his formal coat straining to contain it, and felt her world tilting again. She was acutely aware that accepting would change everything, would mark her in the eyes of every wolf in this room. But the alternative was walking away, returning to the kitchens, and spending the rest of her life wondering what might have happened if she'd been brave enough to take what he was offering. She slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow. The walk from the throne room seemed to take both an eternity and no time at all. Elowen was conscious of every eye following them, every whisper that erupted in their wake. But Kieran walked with his head high, his massive frame radiating confidence and power, and something about being at his side made her feel less small, less broken. He led her through corridors she'd never seen before, the royal wing where servants like her were never permitted. The stone walls here were hung with tapestries and paintings, lit by sconces that cast dancing shadows. Guards stood at attention as they passed, their faces carefully neutral, though Elowen saw more than one set of eyes widen in surprise. Finally, Kieran stopped before a set of ornate double doors. He pushed them open to reveal a private sitting room that took Elowen's breath away. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, flames already crackling within. Comfortable chairs and sofas were arranged in intimate groupings, and through an open doorway, Elowen could see a bedroom beyond. His private chambers. He'd brought her to his private chambers. "Your Maje, Kieran," she corrected herself when he raised an eyebrow. "I shouldn't be here. If anyone finds out, let them find out." He closed the doors behind them and turned to face her, and in the firelight, he was devastating. The flames cast shadows across the sharp planes of his face, highlighted the strong line of his jaw, made his eyes seem to glow from within. "Elowen, I need you to understand something." He crossed the room toward her, each step deliberate, and Elowen's heart began to race. When he stood before her, he slowly, carefully, took both of her hands in his. The size difference was staggering. His hands completely engulfed hers, making her feel delicate in a way she never had before. "When I entered that throne room tonight," he said quietly, "I felt something I've never felt before. My wolf recognized something. Someone." His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands, the touch sending warmth flooding through her veins. "Do you know what the mate bond feels like, Elowen?" Her breath caught. No, he couldn't be suggesting. That was impossible. Fate didn't grant broken omegas like her powerful alphas like him. The universe didn't work that way. "I've heard stories," she whispered. "It's like lightning in your veins." Kieran's eyes were molten gold now, his wolf very close to the surface. "Like every cell in your body recognizing home. Like looking at someone and knowing, with absolute certainty, that they were made for you." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. "I felt that when I saw you, before you ever spoke, before you ever touched my arm. My wolf knew." Tears pricked at Elowen's eyes. She wanted to believe him. Goddess, she wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But the logical part of her mind, the part that had learned to expect nothing, to hope for nothing, couldn't accept it. "I'm broken," she said, and the words cracked on the way out. "My wolf has been shattered for 5 years. I can't shift. I can't heal properly. I'm weak and useless and everything a mate to a king should never be. Your wolf must be mistaken." "My wolf is never mistaken." Kieran released one of her hands to cup her face, his palm warm against her cheek. His touch was so gentle, so reverent, as if she were something precious, rather than something damaged. "Tell me what happened. Tell me about the attack." Elowen closed her eyes, not wanting to revisit those memories, but his touch was grounding, his presence somehow making it feel safe to speak. "Rogues," she said. "They came at night. My pack was small, isolated. We didn't have the numbers to fight them off. My father died first, defending our home. My mother," her voice broke. "My mother and I tried to run. We almost made it to the neighboring territory. But they caught us." She could still remember the pain, the way claws had ripped into her back, the way her wolf had screamed inside her mind before going abruptly, horribly silent, the way her mother had thrown herself between Elowen and the killing blow, sacrificing herself so her daughter might live. They damaged my connection to my wolf, Elowen continued. The healers said the trauma was too severe, that my wolf had retreated so deep to survive that she couldn't come forward anymore. Without her, I can't shift, can't heal quickly, can't contribute to a pack the way I should. I'm half a person. No. Kieran's other hand came up to frame her face, forcing her to open her eyes and look at him. What she saw there stole her breath. Fury at what had been done to her, pain on her behalf, and something fierce and protective that made her broken wolf stir. You're not half a person. You're whole. You're perfect. And your wolf isn't gone, Elowen. I can feel her. She's there, just waiting. That's impossible. Is it? His eyes searched hers. You felt her tonight, didn't you? When you smelled the poison, when you touched me, I saw it in your eyes. Recognition. Your wolf recognizes her mate. Elowen's breath hitched. He was right. She had felt something, a stirring deep inside her that she'd thought was lost forever. But hope was dangerous. Hope had only ever led to disappointment. Even if that's true, she said, it doesn't change the facts. You're a king. You need a strong mate, someone who can stand beside you, who can give you powerful heirs, who can help lead your people. I can't be any of those things. You already stood beside me tonight. Kieran's thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You saw a threat and acted, despite every reason not to. You risked everything to save me. That's not weakness, Elowen. That's the strongest thing anyone in that throne room did all evening. But, and as for powerful heirs, a small smile curved his lips, transforming his face from devastating to absolutely breathtaking. The strength of a wolf isn't determined solely by their ability to shift. My mother was an Omega. Did you know that? Elowen shook her head, shocked. Queen Lyra Ashwood had been legendary, known throughout the territories as a powerful leader and fierce protector. She was, Kieran confirmed, small, quiet, with a wolf that was considered weak by traditional standards. But she had a mind like a steel trap, and a heart brave enough to stand up to my father when he was wrong. She saved our pack more times than I can count, not through physical strength, but through wisdom and courage. His eyes softened. You remind me of her. The words settled into Elowen's chest, warm and precious. She didn't know what to say, how to process the idea that this powerful, devastating Alpha King was looking at her, broken, damaged her, and seeing something worthwhile. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. Of me? Of this. Of believing in something that seems too good to be true, and having it ripped away. Kieran leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. The intimacy of the gesture made Elowen's breath catch. She could feel the warmth of his skin, smell the scent of him surrounding her, feel the solid strength of his body mere inches away. I can't promise that everything will be easy, he said quietly. Being my mate will come with challenges. There will be wolves who question it, who think you're not good enough. There will be danger. Tonight proved that. But I can promise you this, Elowen Thrace. I will never let anyone hurt you again. I will protect you, cherish you, and spend every day proving that you're exactly who my wolf, who I, was meant to find. Kieran. His name felt like honey on her tongue, sweet and right. Let me help you. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Let me help you find your wolf again. The mate bond can heal things that ordinary healing can't. If you'll just trust me, just give us a chance. He didn't finish the sentence because Elowen, for the first time in her life, made a decision based not on fear or practicality, but on the desperate hope blooming in her chest. She pushed up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. For a moment, Kieran went completely still, as if shocked by her boldness. Then a low growl rumbled through his chest, not threatening, but pleased, possessive, and his arms came around her, pulling her against his body. The kiss deepened, and Elowen felt something inside her crack, open, like ice breaking beneath spring sun. Her wolf. She could feel her, truly feel her, for the first time in 5 years. Weak still, cautious, but there, rising toward the surface, drawn by the presence of her mate. Elowen gasped against Kieran's mouth, and he pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes glowing brilliant amber. "You feel her, don't you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes." Elowen's hands fisted in his shirt, gripping the fabric as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. "Goddess, yes. I can feel her." Kieran's smile was pure joy, transforming his face in a way that made him look younger, less burdened by the weight of a crown. He lifted her easily, his massive hands spanning her waist, and spun her in a circle. Elowen couldn't help the laugh that burst from her lips. Surprised, delighted, free. When he set her down, he kept his arms around her, holding her close against his chest. Elowen could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, and her own seemed to sync with it, finding a rhythm they'd share for the rest of their lives. "Stay with me tonight," Kieran said. "Just sleep. I won't push for more until you're ready. But let me hold you. Let me prove that this is real." Elowen knew she should say no, knew that accepting would be crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But her wolf was singing inside her, calling for her mate, and Elowen was tired of being afraid, tired of denying herself anything good because she believed she didn't deserve it. "Yes," she whispered. Kieran's arms tightened around her, and he buried his face in her hair, breathing deeply. "Thank you," he murmured. "Thank you for being brave enough to save me. Thank you for being brave enough to give us a chance." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the fire crackling softly in the background. Then Kieran pulled back and, with surprising gentleness, began to help her prepare for bed. He found one of his shirts for her to wear. It fell to her knees, completely engulfing her smaller frame, and turned his back politely while she changed, though she caught him peeking over his shoulder and blushing when she caught him. The sight of the powerful Alpha King blushing made something warm bloom in Elowen's chest. When she was ready, he led her to his bed, massive, covered in soft furs and silk sheets. Elowen had never seen anything so luxurious. She hesitated at the edge, suddenly acutely aware of how out of place she was in this space. "Come here." Kieran was already in the bed, stripped down to sleep pants that did absolutely nothing to hide the carved perfection of his torso. His chest was a masterpiece of muscle, his abs clearly defined, his arms powerful. Dark hair dusted across his pectorals, trailing down in a line that disappeared beneath his waistband. He was, quite simply, the most beautiful thing Elowen had ever seen, and he was looking at her like she was the beautiful one. She climbed into the bed, and Kieran immediately pulled her close, arranging them so her head rested on his chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. One of his hands traced lazy patterns on her back, soothing and gentle. "Tell me something about yourself," he said quietly. "Something no one else knows." Elowen thought for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "I used to sing," she said finally, "before the attack. My mother said I had the voice of a bird. I haven't sung in 5 years. Why not? Because joy felt wrong. Because I was broken and didn't deserve beautiful things." Kieran's arms tightened around her. "You deserve every beautiful thing this world has to offer," he said fiercely. "And one day, I'm going to hear you sing. I'm going to help you find that joy again." Elowen felt tears prick at her eyes again, but these were different from the ones before. These were the tears of someone who'd been lost in darkness for so long that they'd forgotten what light looked like, and was now seeing the first rays of dawn. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me something no one else knows." She felt Kieran's chest rise and fall with a deep breath. "I'm terrified of failing my people," he admitted. "My father was a great king. Strong, decisive, respected. I spent my whole life training to follow in his footsteps. But there's always this voice in my head asking if I'll be enough, if I'll make the right choices, if I'm worthy of the crown. Elowyn pulled back enough to look up at him. In the dim firelight, she could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the weight he carried. "You saved your people from war," she said. "3 times. You've already proven yourself." "Wars are easy," Kieran said with a sad smile. "You have a clear enemy, a clear objective. Leading in peacetime, making decisions that affect thousands of lives every day. That's harder. And doing it alone?" He cupped her face gently. "I've been alone for a long time, Elowyn. My father died 2 years ago. My mother 3 years before that. I have advisors, friends, allies, but no one who's truly mine, no one I can be vulnerable with." "You're not alone anymore," Elowyn said, and was surprised by the certainty in her own voice. "I'm yours, if you'll have me." Kieran's eyes flashed gold, his wolf surging to the surface. "If I'll have you?" He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Elowyn, my wolf has been pacing inside me since the moment I saw you, demanding I claim you, mark you, make it clear to every wolf in the territory that you're mine. The only thing keeping me from doing it right now is the knowledge that you need time, that you deserve a choice in this." "I choose you," Elowyn said. "I choose this. I choose us." The kiss he gave her then was different from the first, deeper, more claiming. His hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head back to give him better access, and Elowyn surrendered to it completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "Sleep," he commanded gently. "Tomorrow everything changes. Tomorrow I'm going to stand before my entire court and publicly claim you as my mate. But tonight, just let me hold you." Elowyn settled back against his chest, feeling safer and more protected than she had in 5 years. Kieran's hand resumed its gentle stroking along her back, and she felt her wolf, still weak, still cautious, but definitely present, curling up contentedly inside her, recognizing the safety of her mate's embrace. "Kieran?" she murmured, already half asleep. "Thank you, for seeing me when everyone else looked away." His arms tightened around her, and she felt him press a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for being brave enough to save me," he replied. "In more ways than one." Elowyn drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the arms of her mate, her broken wolf finally beginning to heal, and for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to hope for a future that held more than just survival. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through the tall windows of Kieran's chambers. Elowyn woke slowly, warm and comfortable in a way she couldn't remember being before. It took her a moment to remember where she was, and when she did, her eyes flew open. Kieran was already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "Good morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning." Elowyn was suddenly very aware that she was in his bed, wearing his shirt, her hair undoubtedly a mess. She started to pull away, embarrassed, but Kieran's arm around her waist held her in place. "Don't," he said. "Don't run from me. You're beautiful like this. I'm a mess. You're perfect." A knock at the door interrupted them. Kieran sighed, pressing one more quick kiss to Elowyn's forehead before calling out, "Enter!" Beta Gareth stepped inside, his scarred face carefully neutral, though Elowyn saw his eyes flicker to where she was tucked against Kieran's side. She felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "My king," Gareth said formally. "Lord Casimir has been interrogated through the night. He's confessed to attempting to poison you, acting under orders from the Eastern Territories. They hoped to destabilize our pack, make us vulnerable to attack." Kieran's expression darkened, his eyes flashing amber. Elowyn felt the muscles in his arm tense against her. "And the others involved?" "We've identified 3 more conspirators among the nobility. All have been arrested, and await your judgment." "Good." Kieran's hand found Elowyn's beneath the covers, threading their fingers together. "Prepare the throne room. I'll address the court in 1 hour." Gareth's eyes flickered to their joined hands, and something that might have been approval crossed his scarred features. "Yes, my king. Should I prepare for any other announcements?" Kieran looked down at Elowen, and she saw the question in his eyes. Was she ready for this? Ready to be publicly claimed, to step into a role she'd never imagined for herself? Her wolf stirred inside her, stronger than yesterday, pushing toward the surface. "Yes," her wolf seemed to say. "Yes, this is right. This is where we belong." Elowen squeezed Kieran's hand and nodded. "Yes," Kieran said, never taking his eyes off Elowen. "Prepare for another announcement, a very important one." Gareth bowed. "As you command, my king." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, your majesty, she saved your life. That makes her worthy in my eyes, regardless of rank or bloodline." After the beta left, Kieran pulled Elowen close, kissing her thoroughly. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Last chance to run," he said, though his tone suggested he'd hunt her down if she tried. "Once I claim you publicly, there's no going back. You'll be mine in the eyes of every wolf in the territory. They'll come after you, try to use you to get to me. Your life will never be simple or quiet again." "I don't want simple or quiet," Elowen said, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I want you. I want this. I want to be brave enough to take what's being offered instead of hiding in the shadows." Kieran's smile was brilliant, transforming his face. "Then let's give them something to talk about." An hour later, Elowen stood beside Kieran's throne, dressed in a gown that had been hastily altered to fit her. Deep blue silk that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair had been styled by the king's personal servants, who'd been surprisingly gentle with her, whispering encouragement and congratulations. The throne room was packed with nobility, all of them buzzing with speculation. Elowen could feel their eyes on her, could hear the whispers. Some curious, some scandalized, some outright hostile. Lady Vivian Blackthorn stood near the front, her beautiful face twisted with barely concealed fury. Several other high-born daughters clustered near her, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. But Elowen didn't care, because Kieran stood beside her, magnificent in his formal attire, his massive frame radiating power and authority. And when he looked at her, his amber eyes glowing with possessive pride, nothing else mattered. "Silence," Kieran commanded, and the room fell immediately quiet. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the power of an alpha king who'd earned his position through strength and wisdom. "Last night, someone attempted to take my life. Lord Casimir Thorne, acting as an agent of the Eastern Territories, poisoned my wine with a combination of nightshade and silver dust." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several nobles began speaking at once, but Kieran raised his hand and silence fell again. "I would have died," he continued, "if not for the bravery of one wolf. A wolf who saw the danger, who risked her own safety to warn me, despite having every reason to remain silent." He turned to Elowen, extending his hand. She took it, feeling the strength and warmth of his fingers closing around hers. "Elowen Thrace saved my life," Kieran said, his voice ringing through the throne room. "And in doing so, she revealed herself to be exactly what my wolf has been searching for. What I have been searching for." The room erupted in whispers. Elowen could feel the shock, the disbelief, the outrage from some quarters. But Kieran's hand in hers was an anchor, keeping her grounded. "Elowen Thrace is my mate," Kieran declared, his voice cutting through the noise. "Chosen by fate, recognized by my wolf, and claimed by me. From this moment forward, she is your queen, and anyone who challenges her, questions her, or attempts to harm her will answer to me directly." His eyes swept the crowd, glowing amber, his wolf very close to the surface. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. "Does anyone wish to challenge this?" he asked, baring his teeth slightly. The silence was absolute. Not a single wolf moved or spoke. Then, from the back of the room, Beta Gareth stepped forward and dropped to one knee. "My queen," he said, his voice carrying clearly. You have my loyalty and my protection. It was like watching dominoes fall. One by one, the nobles began to kneel, some reluctantly, some with genuine warmth. Within moments, the entire throne room was kneeling before Elowen, acknowledging her as their queen. Tears pricked at Elowen's eyes. Yesterday she'd been invisible. Today she stood at the side of the most powerful alpha in the territories, claimed and protected, and valued. Kieran turned to her, and in front of his entire court, he cupped her face and kissed her. The kiss was claiming, possessive, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that she was his, and he was hers. When they broke apart, Kieran's eyes were glowing brilliant amber, his wolf surging with possessive satisfaction. Mine, he growled, just loud enough for her to hear. Yours, Elowen agreed, feeling her own wolf, stronger now, healing in the presence of her mate, rise to meet his. The crowd rose to their feet, and while Elowen could still see hostility on some faces, see doubt and disapproval, she also saw acceptance from others. Beta Gareth wore a small smile. Several of the older nobles looked approving, and the servants who'd been kind to her in the kitchens were crying happy tears. There's one more thing, Kieran announced. He looked down at Elowen, his expression softening. My mate's wolf was damaged in a rogue attack 5 years ago. She's been unable to shift, unable to fully connect with her wolf, but the mate bond has begun to heal what was broken. He turned back to the assembled nobles. I'm declaring a 3-day mourning period for Elowen's lost family, and a celebration for the healing that's begun. In 3 days, we'll have a formal mating ceremony. Until then, anyone who wishes to offer their support and protection to their new queen is welcome to do so. Those who can't accept her, his expression hardened, you know where the door is. No one moved toward the door. Good, Kieran said with satisfaction. Now I believe my mate and I have earned some privacy. Beta Gareth will handle the interrogation of the remaining conspirators and coordinate with our allies regarding the Eastern Territory's aggression. Court is dismissed. He didn't wait for a response, simply took Elowen's hand and led her from the throne room. The crowd parted before them, and Elowen held her head high, channeling every ounce of courage she possessed. They made it back to Kieran's chambers before Elowen's composure finally cracked. As soon as the door closed behind them, she burst into tears, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief and joy and disbelief. Hey, Kieran said gently, pulling her into his arms. Hey, it's okay. You did perfectly. They all saw me, Elowen sobbed into his chest. After 5 years of being invisible, they all saw me. They did, Kieran agreed, his hand stroking soothingly through her hair. And they saw exactly what I see. Someone brave and strong and worthy of being queen. I don't know how to be a queen. You'll learn, and I'll be beside you every step of the way. He pulled back just enough to look at her, brushing away her tears with his thumbs. Do you feel her? Your wolf? Elowen closed her eyes, reaching for that place inside her that had been silent for so long. Her wolf was there, still cautious, still healing,